Now, it's been described as one of the most important revolutions in history. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 changed Iran from a monarchy into a theocracy and made political Islam a force to be reckoned with around much of the globe. Well, the revolution unfolded 30 years ago, but its impact is felt to this day, as Svetlana Kurakina reports.
It was a rapid and dramatic upheaval that transformed Iran from a monarchy to a religious state. 3 decades later, those who took part in the Iranian Revolution still believe it was the right thing to do.
We felt the tyranny of the Shah and his people. Our revolution was about justice and the triumph of the oppressed.
Almost overnight, the West's most steadfast ally in the Muslim world became an enemy. The revolution toppled the increasingly unpopular Shah, seen by many in the country as a US-backed puppet. The Shah fled, and in October 1979 was allowed into the US for cancer treatment. Islamic militants then seized 52 Americans in the US embassy in Tehran, demanding he be returned. The hostage crisis lasted for 444 days and saw the US cut off diplomatic ties with Iran. The crisis and the failed rescue attempt led to President Jimmy Carter's defeat to Ronald Reagan, who won the release of the hostages on the day of his inauguration.
The hostage crisis was like a slap in the face for the US. It's something they won't easily forget.
Years before the revolution, Washington had ensured the Shah stayed in power with a coup d'etat against a popular prime minister, both to maintain Iran's support in the Cold War and to protect its oil interests. The revolution took Washington by surprise, but its backing for the Shah provoked much of the popular anger.
We'll never yield to the world arrogance of America and its allies.
The revolution was dominated by one man, Ayatollah Khomeini, who rose to prominence, boldly criticizing the Shah's secularism and ties with the US. He had been banished from the country, but wasn't forgotten. In February 1979, after more than 14 years in exile, Khomeini returned to Tehran aboard a French plane, to a rapturous greeting by several million Iranians.
I appoint a government with the support of these people.
Soon after the revolution, Iran was shaken by a different upheaval. Saddam Hussein's Iraqi army invaded. Iran's former ally now sided with its enemy. Seeing Iraq as a possible strategic partner and a counterweight to Iran, Washington sent money, intelligence and military help to the Iraqi regime it was later to topple. The war ended with the UN-brokered ceasefire, but hostilities between Washington and Tehran continued. In 2002, George Bush accused Iran of supporting terrorism and trying to develop nuclear weapons. But in the 1950s, it was Washington that helped Tehran launch its nuclear program. Iran is now building its first atomic power plant and insists its purposes are peaceful. But the United States have spearheaded UN decisions to impose sanctions over Iran's nuclear ambitions. Even the late Shah's son thinks the punishment is unjust.
Why
is the world so worried? It's the same world that was rushing to sell us nuclear technologies in the first place. And now the very same countries are imposing sanctions on us.
Barack Obama is offering to open unconditional dialogue with Iran about its nuclear program. 30 years after the revolution, Washington is now ready at least to talk to its former friend turned sworn enemy. Svetlana Kurakina, RT.
An associate at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace says relations between the US and Iran will continue to be tense.
Well, there's still tremendous mistrust and ill will. We're talking about 30 years of not having relations. It's like a couple which is divorced very violently, being reconciliated. It's going to take a bit of time before this trust is built. But in a best-case scenario, I think the two sides would initially work together on areas of common interest, like Iraq and Afghanistan, and then touch upon the broader areas of contention, like the nuclear issue, the Arab-Israeli conflict. But I think more likely what you will see is kind of one or two steps forward and one or two steps back, and it will be a frustrating process, simply because I don't think that the Iranian regime has yet reached an internal consensus that they're interested in having an amicable relationship with the United States.